Planning for Transport Electrification. The electrification of the transport sector is now a cornerstone of global energy transition strategies driven by a commitment to environmental sustainability and energy efficiency. Electric vehicles, EVs, promise to reduce carbon emissions, combat air pollution, and reduce fossil fuel reliance. However, successful implementation demands meticulous planning, robust infrastructure, and collaborative efforts among stakeholders. This session delves into comprehensive planning of transport electrification encompassing distribution grid development, power supply, public charging stations, PCS, and bus depots. It also emphasizes partnerships between distribution companies, DISCOMs, public transportation operators, city governments, and OEMs. The goal is to identify challenges, share best practices, and outline a roadmap for a sustainable electric transportation ecosystem in India. The session offers valuable insights with a focus on actionable discussions, highlighting the importance of stakeholder synergy in propelling India toward a greener and more sustainable transportation future. The discussion points of the session would be distribution grid planning for transport electrification, MW scale power of bus depots and public charging stations, and the third would be collaboration amongst the stakeholders. I would like to invite, as the chair to this session, Mr. K.R. Jyotilal Sir, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Energy, Government of Kerala. Please put your hands together for Mr. Jyotilal Sir. As the moderator to this session, I would request Mr. Girish Ghatikar, ISGF WG Chair on Flexibility and Electric Mobility. Please put your hands together in receiving him as the moderator of the session. Our speakers of the evening is Mr. Biju Prabhakar. Mr. Biju Prabhakar is not here. Mr. Arvind Jadhav, former Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka. Welcome, sir. Mr. Mukesh Dhadish, Head Business Development, Sustainability and Clean Technology, BSES Yamuna Power Limited. Mr. Mukesh. Welcome, sir. Mr. Ramakrishna Singh, Head of Business Operations, EV Charging, Tata Power. Mr. Ramakrishna Singh. Mr. Arindam Maitra, VP and LT PTD Digital Energy Grid Services, and SK Senapati, Head Sales and Commercial Services, and L&T PTD Digital Energy Solutions. Mr. Arindam Maitra. And last but not least, our speaker of the evening, Ariel Dosetare, Business Development Manager, Electron, with the video presentation. Sure. I would like to hand over to our moderator, Mr. Girish Ghatikar, to take you through the session. Over to you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Sandhya, for that excellent introduction, and thank you, Pearl, for help. So today is we are the last session for the day, and we're standing between the session and the dinner. But thanks to the previous panelist, I was expecting it to be delayed a little bit more. We were only 15 minutes behind, which is just phenomenal. I would say we're on time, considering the circumstances. But this is only 60-minute session. So I want to make sure that we give sufficient time to all our eminent speakers to talk. I'll quickly call upon the chair to provide opening remarks for the session, and then we'll walk through each of the speakers. And I'm hoping we'll get maybe 10-15 minutes in the end that allows us to kind of focus on some question and answers, a little bit more interactive discussion. With that, I'll call Mr. Jyotilal to provide his remarks. You could do that from there, sir, or you could come here. Whichever. Okay.
Thank you. In fact, those who are in the dais are all much more experienced, and probably, maybe with my limited knowledge, 1 or 2 points I would like to say. When we started the EV electric vehicle, see, it is like a chicken egg situation, which will come. Charging will come, and people will, enough demand comes, and then you put up the charging center. So it has to be supply driven. So that is where I think government intervention will be required. You set up the charging center, automatically demand will pick up. Let me tell you that at present we have utilization of 22%. So I think last time it was telling 2.1% the chargers. I think 22% is good enough. Okay, it will all pick up, because at present we are 1.2 lakh vehicle. I am sure 1 million is what our target is. So that is once. Second is you learn from mistakes. So failures teach you more, because success will make you egoistic, but failures only you learn. In fact, when everyone said that, you can't have intercity electric buses, the bus has got a range of 250 kilometers. Trivandrum and Kochi distance is 250 kilometers. We said, let us start the intercity buses. So that let us see how many kilometers it will go. The first bus started from Trivandrum to Kochi, and you know what, it got stuck at Haripad, a place in between. Then I said, this is the best. We had a lot of criticism. The government started intercity buses, now it got stuck and people have to stop. I thought, okay, one day this failure is a great lesson. We said, this is exactly place I want to set up my charging center, where the vehicle will stop with all the present traffic. So you have to learn from the field. So this is another great learning which we did. So even now we are able to operate intercity buses on electric with those time range was much less. So another one experiment which we did was with Ashok Leyland on the swapping. Then we say economics wise, swapping, robotic swapping, it is not very much viable. Pantograph and other things. In fact, Electrion company from Sweden, I think his representative, Mr. Ariel is here, I think he is online. So how to electrify? You can electrify the road instead of electric vehicles, so that the battery size comes down. Your amount of your electric vehicle will be cheaper than any other source, any other vehicle, because the 30 to 40% is the battery cost. And if you can reduce the size and electrify the road, unfortunately we never developed our national highway to that extent. This is now only we are developing the national highway. This is the best time. So both of us went and told our CM, sir, we will take a pilot. Okay, go ahead. Pilot to Info Park and IT parks. From airport, we will electrify and see how much of use. And then we will say, whoever is not using an electric vehicle, you pay for it. And so that can be used for, the infrastructure investment which might be required to electrify the road. Wireless charging is another mode which is coming up. Maybe 1 or 2 issues I will just highlight before I close. See, one of the things is the cost of maybe the transformer capacity. Maybe RDSS project is now there. So transformer capacity need to be increased. Because otherwise, 11 kV line, you need to bring it up to the charging center wherever you are setting up. Maybe Kerala is a place where we have, even our God, could not be given 2 feet. Vamana Avatar, we say that we couldn't give 3 feet of land, only 2 feet we could give. So land is very precious. Getting land acquisition at the right place for the charging center is one of the challenges which we are facing, which may not be there in other states. Second is the 11 kV line, which I said about, you need to have transformer capacity to be increased. No private sector will invest, otherwise it's not economically viable. This is one thing which I think, thanks to Niti Aayog, I think RDSS now they are allowing charging infrastructure also as part of the, instead of only purely electric, DISCOM distribution network, they are considering this. That is another. Third one is we have to have the heat maps of all the cities where so that you can know where you should put the charging centers. In fact, Kochi is one city where we have done the entire study for the Kochi city. We identified that we need two-wheelers, 2,132 charging centers by 2030, and four-wheelers, 91, and commercial three-wheelers, 4,502, and four-wheelers, 3,527. And the locations also, thanks to WRI, which did the roadmap for a city. So like this, each city we need to develop. And then the requirement of the power is another thing which we need to, we never thought of how are we going to address that issue. If we say the Kerala, all the vehicles are going to be electrified, I need 71.5 million units. So which is more than my present consumption. So I think that is why we need to plan for the power requirement. Otherwise, grid balancing will be another big issue. Then smart grid technology, whether so that demand side issues need to be addressed, because at present we are talking about another thing is the STU capacity, STU as well as CTU capacity, which need to be planned for such a whether if you are taking from the grid or you generate, I think you should have either STU and CTU capacity to be developed within the state. This is another point. Then renewable energy. For example, we are going for a solar city in Trivandrum. So how we can use the renewable energy for this charging? Otherwise, it should be like you are unless the source of power is green, how can we say that we are doing any great service? It's only that shifting your emission from here to somewhere else. So I think that's another point which we need to keep in mind. Then regulatory mechanism for the on-site and off-site RE generation and smart managed EV charging. I think that's a very good model. I think it was tried in Delhi. I think that's a very good. I think this is something which you can do. Induction charging, wireless charging, and pantograph charging, I think is another thing. I think Electrion person will be probably demonstrating it. With these few words, let me, these are all my small experiments and maybe learnings. In fact, we are trying now with instead of the battery, how I can replace it. Like Honda City, they said you take the battery out and I will give you the fuel cell. In fact, we are going for a pilot with fuel cell. Already the KP80 has developed indigenous fuel cell, which is much more cheaper. We need to make it within the country so that and one more next step is cryogenic tanker so that you can have 1,500 miles in one liquid hydrogen carrier. So that is another experiment which you are working with J-Turbo and other companies. So we need all players, including the OEMs, then the OMCs, all of them should work together to make it happen so that we are able to, electrify or decarbonize the transport sector. These are some of the suggestions. So thank you for giving an opportunity to share some of the thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jyotilal. That was excellent introduction and a kickoff to the session and what's going to be coming. In the excitement, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Rishiketikar. I'm an advisor and I chair one of the working group for electric mobility and flexibility for India Smart Grid Forum. I've been involved with India Smart Grid Forum, I don't even know how long, for quite some time. And it's always a pleasure to come here and attend. And it's my first time here in Kochi. As they say in God's own country, I can say I visited one more country in my life. So that's good to know. Although this is my passion work, coming to India, working in India, because I used to lead the India program for the Department of Energy some time back when I was working in Berkeley lab, and I've continued that support. But bringing the food on the table work for me is, I work for one of the large OEMs in the United States. You may have heard of the company called General Motors, or GM. So I'm a fellow there. I work on the electric mobility and its transformation with charging infrastructure and other things that are necessary from the flexibilities perspective, what Mr. Jyotilal also spoke about. So with that background and introduction, it's very important to understand that electric mobility is a very, very different way of looking mobility. Yes, from a customer perspective, it's not any different because you're buying a car and you're still driving, right? And it's not any different. But when you look from how do you make an electric car? The entire, electric car inside is quite different on how it operates and how many parts do you have. The entire factory that needs to come together to put that is quite distinct and different, and it's a very expensive affair. And when you look from the charging infrastructure, you need to build charging infrastructure, whether it's a hydrogen fuel cell or battery electric vehicles. And then finally, it's electric, right? So you need to have electric infrastructure. That becomes very, very critical in terms of, how do you support electric vehicles to be able to move and provide the source of energy, which is electricity in this case, so or hydrogen in the case of fuel cells. So I think looking at that from a very distinct angle is very critical, and that's what this particular session tries to do. One, we are going to look at what do we need to do scaling, right? Scaling is very important, and we will talk about that in a bit in terms of what is the tipping point. I don't know how many of you heard that term tipping point. It's a term that is used to really say, from early adopters to mass scale adoption, what is the percentage of adoptions when is necessary? But typically they say around 5 to 8% is necessary, right? And we're seeing that 5 to 8% in the United States. Is that a tipping point? Possibly. We'll see how that goes. But scalability is very key, local manufacturing, cost effectiveness. The second is also charging infrastructure. Mr. Jyotilal talked about EV comes first or charging infrastructure comes first. Charging infrastructure is very critical, but the advantage of EV is if you have a battery electric vehicles, you can have possibly your charging infrastructure at home, right? Which is very unique to the internal combustion engines we have seen in the past. The third one and very important one is electric infrastructure. Distribution utilities playing a very critical role. Whether it's Tata Power or Kerela Electricity Board or anyone else, the role of utility plays an important aspect because eventually it's one of the batteries in a vehicle. They need to support energy and electricity to it, and how you build the infrastructure to support is important. And finally, the collaboration, right? We can't look at all of these independently. We have to look at them together. From that perspective, if I look at it in a different lens, we need different collaborating stakeholders. We need regulators who can create good policies to shape adoption of electric vehicles. We need utility who can provide great infrastructure, electric infrastructure. And then finally, we need OEMs and private sector that are willing to create or manufacture EVs, manufacture charging stations, manufacture software and other systems that are necessary to integrate. And we have similarly those set of panels that represents the regulation, stakeholders, the utilities, and finally the vendor community. With that, I would like to call upon Mr. Arvind Jadhav, the former Chief Secretary of Government of Karnataka, to come and provide his remark. And I have requested the speakers to keep them to 5 minutes if they can, because we have a few speakers and we have also Ariel from Israel. I'm presuming, Ariel, you are in Israel right now, and hope everything is fine out there. So with that, I'll call upon Mr. Arvind Jadhav to kind of give his remarks.
I thought I'll say good afternoon, but I think it's already good evening. So, distinguished guests and distinguished panelists, and the President of ISGF, Mr. Reji Pillai. Problem. It's my pleasure to be here. Though he's introduced me as retired Chief Secretary, I think that was in one of the dinosaurial eras. I've retired now, it's more than 8 years. So, what did I do in the last 8 years was that first thing I got introduced was to electric auto rickshaws. We had to provide electric auto rickshaws in Ceylon, Sri Lanka. And we had all sorts of problems, and they wanted also to have electric buses to be introduced there. One of the major earlier producers of electric buses and all that were in Hungary and China. Chinese buses are in India now. I think various denominations are there. The second time I got introduced to this problem of electric vehicles, three-wheelers, was BSES Delhi. I was having a discussion with Amal Sinha trying to look at, what is the issue of losses and theft. imagine that in Delhi, in BSES, the largest theft is on account of electric three-wheelers. And that is rampant in North India. Whether it is in Lucknow, whether it is in Delhi or Noida or Meerut and all, very easy. Buy some equipment which is half Chinese and do some jugaad, put this battery, and then there's a group of people invest in around about 500, 600 of such vehicles, and they give it to people to run the show. And how the battery is done is one pole is there and switch is taken and large number of plugs are there. You know, the sockets are there. Everybody puts in it. And BSES is struggling around to find out where it is. By the time they come there, everything is vanished. Only the pole is remaining there. You don't even know who the owner is. Then I got involved in looking at this particular thing as a municipal problem. So we had a visit to a place in China, Zuhair, which is a very small town. I think it's very close to Macau. I think all of you know Macau. And we wanted to see what's happening there. Zuhair is a 10 lakh population with all its buses being run on electricity. The entire, there's not one bus which is non-electric. All buses are electric. So we had to go there and find out, and that ZTE was the manufacturer of the electric buses there. And we had to ask them what is the problem and all that. And the manufacturer was manufacturing the buses and also the charging stations. And it was not the buses being provided, but the charging station was provided and network was being done. It was not being handled by the DISCOM there. It was handled by the municipality there. Because as the chairman was mentioning, in Kerala land is very costly. So you have to find out somebody who can keep these charging stations. Then I moved on and I got it into discussions with some of the organizations on selling charging stations to the utilities. But they had a problem. What type of charging station to be sold? Hundreds of people are there. A lot of manufacturers are there. What type of goods and what type of product is there? What is specification and all that? When we had a brainstorming, we decided that we will not supply charging stations and grid management for charging stations to the DISCOMs. We will first enter wherever there are large fleet owners. That is, not only the road transport corporations, but there are a large number of organizations who have a fleet of vehicles for their employees. And they have a fleet of cargo, this one. So we should enter that area. Because the problem which was coming around was that this is a new animal, the electric vehicle. Then I got involved in, because we were looking at this charging station and the battery is very heavy. So what do we do with that? And we found that the government of India has a policy for pushing for battery, this one, manufacturing it. I think there's a PLI also given to somebody on this. They want battery swapping. Just take it and forget it. Under this sort of a scenario where the government is pushing for take it and forget it, I don't know how the DISCOMs are going to handle all these issues on that. That is the key problem which comes up. What is the problem? This is a new animal. Its consumption is not like your regular consumption. We all are born and brought up under AC conditions. This animal is a DC condition. We all think about harmonics and power quality and all that are all the problems of the utilities. And in this one, we have to be very sure that if it doesn't do well, some problem goes on, car is gone. I can go to a faulty charger and try to get charged, and my vehicle can get fried. So what do you do? Then there are people like all of you here who do not want three-wheelers, who may not even take two-wheelers. A large number of two-wheelers are there, which are all battery operated and all that. Battery swapping is going on that. Three-wheelers are there, battery swapping is going on that. Then people like us, the market, who are looking for cars and electric mobility and all that one. Unfortunately, this customer is mobile. That is not going to be available at one particular place as the distribution utility has thought about. That, here is a connection, the consumer, fixed, latitude, longitude fixed, address fixed. I give power to him, then I handle him, whatever I do it. I am the best person to know what has to be given to him. But this new customer, new animal, it runs away. It can be in a low tension houses or where low power, this one power, LT power is being consumed, it can be sitting in a very high tension places also. What do you do? How do you handle it? So these are the questions which are coming up, and therefore what I am saying is, first point which I would like to leave it to all of you here is, you treat the mobile, this EV as a mobile customer. Let that particular vehicle have a unique number. Because this vehicle, one day it is going to get charged in Kochi. Second day it is going to be in some other utility somewhere. And third day it can be somewhere else. Then what do you do? That means all the vehicles are in Kochi, in this Kochi Smart City utility, sitting here, and they all go to Guruvayur, and they all get charged there. Then the KCBL will start thinking, no, there are no vehicles out here and all that, how come I have to look at this demand? That's one particular problem on this particular vehicle. That is what was happening in BSCS when we were looking at the three-wheelers. Take the plugs, take the sockets, go to some other place. And when again you come there, they again move, because they are mobile. The other issue is that this creates a very different demand. In the morning, Mr. Reggie had mentioned about this particular area being, the power being consumed is green power, net zero, and all that he was talking. We did not go for distributed generating, this one, a generator here. We got a line and we got everything. But number of cars outside, all of them come here. They negate everything which you are trying to do green, because all are petrol driven and diesel driven, and this one is there. All of them are there. Now just for example, just think. All these vehicles are EV. Then what type of charge from KCBL I should take? All of them will be charging here, no? So what will be the demand in this place then? So suddenly the demand in this area will surge. How does the distribution utility plan for this then? It's not sufficient to know that there is a charging station somewhere. But the point is that in a place like this where convention centers are there and 10,000 EV vehicles are going to come in, and if everybody is going to charge here because we are sitting the whole day, we'll charge it. The demand will shoot up. So what type of distribution planning you are going to do for that? So that is the issue. This is a new animal. So when we are looking at the harmonics and all that one, we are trying to work out a app as to grid distribution app. That if you have so many cars and all that one, what is the harmonics, which will tell the size of the, life of the battery, how much yet to be charged, what's happened, how many number of cycles in it. Because in battery, the question is basically not the number of hours and all that, it's basically the number of cycles. The age of the battery is going to be on the, if you're charging very fast charging, the cycles will go down. And you're doing low charging, we don't want it, because we can't wait for 3 hours or 4 hours charging. So these are the problems which are coming up. So when we looked at it and we asked these questions and all that one, my simple and this one is, there is going to be a scale up of electric vehicles, but not necessarily in the desired direction as you want. The number of EVs, four-wheelers will be much less, but the number of two-wheelers will be high. When we started with the three-wheeler and two-wheeler, as the chairman had mentioned, that when they started an electric bus switch and they stopped in between somewhere and there you should put a charging point, we asked, what is the average distance traveled by the scooters in Bangalore? Not 60 kilometers, 100 kilometers, only 32 kilometers. The guy takes the vehicle from his house, goes to his place, comes back, and everything else is within 5 kilometers. He does not want a 65 kilometer or 150 kilometer, 100 kilometer battery. He wants a smaller. So when he is charging, we did a survey, we asked this question. He said, no, I'm not interested. My job is this, I go from here to there and then come. Now, if this is so, then the utility will have to understand how many number of these vehicles are being parked in the night. Again, you have to know where the vehicles are moving. They are all mobile one. During night time, they may be in residence, in the daytime it may be somewhere else. And how are you going to handle that one? So these are the few words which I wanted to share with you in terms of my experience over the last 6 years in this one. And looking at this, on the obligations and all that one, I think government is still not very clear about what they want to do with this EV, this new animal. They are treating this new animal as another consumer, an HT consumer or an LT consumer, and they're trying to prepare that way. I don't think it will going to work. I think you'll have to make a change, and DISCOMs will have to look at it. The other way of looking at it is this, that there would be challenges. Should we really invest in energy infrastructure for this entire thing, for EV charging and all that one? What are you expecting? Investment returns in how many years? 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. But the danger which is sitting on our head is the hydrogen. Most of the people who are looking at for EV cars and all that one, mobile, four-wheelers, I don't think four-wheelers will have a long, this one, whatever others may say, but my opinion is this, that most of the automobile companies in the world are not very really for electric mobile, vehicles. They have invested billions of dollars in trying to get the IC engine to whatever level it is today. And they want something in which the IC engine can continue to run. Nobody is going to say that, okay, and if regulators like in India we do, in electric sector, standard assets, okay, we have to pay for standard assets. My God, you'll have to pay through your nose. Who is going to, every car and all that which is, facility which has been done there, and today's competition is there. Toyota has spent $40 billion in India. Given the standard assets, sorry, it won't be possible. Toyota is not going to help you out. Sorry to take that name, but not necessarily Toyota, anybody else. They are not going to move. Hydrogen is one thing which they are excited. But two-wheelers and three-wheelers are not in that range. And two-wheelers and three-wheelers are going to go tremendously. And that's where your problem will happen. So one, you have to look at that. So the markets are also changing. These markets are going up and down, the things which are changing on the hand. The other issue which is coming up is technology. You can't treat them as a regular technology. The point is, charging station, you're going to put a 4,000 rupees smart meter on that? Sir, car mein 4,000 ka meter lagayenge aap? You can, no. Then what is the technology you're going to use? Metering is not at all an issue. You're going to have 1 million customers with no meter available. And there are millions and billions of customers who are with meters. I don't know how you're going to handle it. And the day you're going to make sure that the metering of the car charging is done, that day your smart meter is dead. Think about it. There's a new customer coming who's going to change the rules of the game. And if that is being done, then you have to see how the things work out. So what has happened is, in our discussions and all that one, we are now looking at gated communities where we know the customers, and if the gated community is fully into 100% electric mobility, then we form a grid for that, because the grid requirements of that is going to be very different from the grid requirement which is doing done. And we move away from LT type of consumption to HT type of consumers. The number of LT consumers for the distribution utility will vanish, and only who will remain so-called cross-subsidized type of customers, you know, who consume about 100 or 200 units a day, or farmers or pumps or something like that, they'll remain. But balanced people will try to move out. That's what's happening in Bangalore. Gated communities are coming up, apartments are coming up, they're all taking differently. I know that utilities will be able to do something, or they're doing something on this. However, in this sector, are you going to play the catching up game, or are we going to confront it and do the investment? But I'm sure that whatever you're thinking on the ground as on today, if you're going by your DISCOM, I've been in DISCOM for about 11 years in energy sector, but you're going to think like the way I thought that time, I don't think we'll survive. So it's better that you think out of the box and change it. If you don't do it, it will not be possible. And don't please play the catch-up game. Please be open and see what are the other technologies which are coming in. And one technology which is going to disrupt everything is AI. So with this one, I'll say that whether the policymakers, users, or suppliers and providers and all that one, you have to look at how AI is going to help you out in this particular thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Arvind. Thank you for that excellent overview. Always appreciate your experience. So that really helps in terms of, I think Mr. Jyotila, you mentioned about learning from failures, right? My father is a teacher. He told me, life is too short to make all your mistakes, learn from others, right? So that's extremely important in terms of learning the failures and trying to grow faster than anyone else. And that's where some of the countries that have done really well and also have failed and have learned might be a good experience for India to learn from it. With that, I would like to call upon the utility side of things, Mr. Mukesh Dadich, who is the head for Business Development and Sustainability and Clean Technologies from BSES Emina Power. If you don't mind coming, you can either speak from there or from the dais, whichever you prefer. But I only request to keep it to 5 minutes so that we kind of wrap up the session on time.
Thank you, Girish. And thank you. So my work has been made easy by my fellow panelist, Jadhav sir. He has described the concerns and challenges arising out of this evolving EV ecosystem especially for the distribution utilities. And we have already seen some of the things happening on the ground since we are operating in Delhi, and Delhi is slightly ahead on the learning curve as far as this EV story is concerned. So in Delhi, perhaps we started with the three-wheelers introduction way back in 2010 Commonwealth Games as a showcase project. And believe me that there was no policy support, subsidy, anything was there, and still this e-rickshaw success story is some kind of topic of study, how this thing picked up so fast in and around Delhi. And obviously we were also not geared up to face this kind of new load. So therefore some of the concerns were there in terms of safety, some electricity thefts and other things. But as I can speak today that we have largely controlled this kind of charging load, and we have brought almost 99% of the EV charging load under the billing net. As far as BYPL BSES Yamuna is concerned, we served around 22-23% of the Delhi population. We have more than 1,000 number of e-rickshaw charging connections in our area. So that problem has largely been controlled. The other segment which is fast emerging is the fleet segment and last mile delivery. Again, the last mile delivery is in the segment of two-wheeler and three-wheelers only, and obviously there are mandates from the government as well that at least 25% of the new vehicles introduced by these last mile delivery operators should be EV only. And then these fleet operators also are mandated to introduce or to implement this 25%, and later on in 2-3 years time they have to convert their 100% fleet into EV. So this is the second biggest kind of change which is happening in the EV segment. The third one is obviously the public transport, which is the topic for today's panel discussion. And government of Delhi has huge plans in terms of introduction of EV buses. They have already chalked out a roadmap whereby more than 8,000 buses will be introduced in phases in next 2-3 years. And around 700 to 800 buses have already on the ground. So we have started serving the load. As far as Delhi is concerned, around 40 to 50 megawatt load is being served on the bus depots. And our estimate is that to serve 8,000 buses, there will be requirement of 550 to 600 megawatt. The type of chargers they are using. If they use fast charging, then this megawatt consumption will increase. Yeah. So in a way we are gearing up, and also we have already commissioned some of the studies in terms of understanding the load pattern, load behavior, and how it is going to impact the overall power position, because the city like Delhi has very peculiar load curves. We have peak load during daytime around 3 to 4, at least for 7-8 good months. And also at the night time there is cooling load So another peak of around same quantity at night hours as well. So interestingly, we have seen the similar load curve for EV bus charging as well. So there is opportunity charging for EV buses around 3 to 4 p.m. in the daytime, and when the buses return to their parent bus depot, then they start charging around 10 o'clock, and we observe the peak load of bus charging around 1 o'clock, 12 in the midnight. So these are some of the challenges or issues which we have to address going forward. There could be solutions like smart charging, or maybe some sort of support from RE or something like that. So therefore, our suggestion will be that whenever planning for such kind of big charging hubs, whether it could be for bus charging, for state transport, or maybe for the fleet operators in the metro cities, DISCOM should be made an integral part in terms of planning, because a large infrastructure of the order of, if I talk about Delhi EV bus charging depot, then we are releasing connections of the order of 4 megawatt to 15 megawatt at a single location. So that's huge. It's either on 33, 66 kV. So if there is no 66 in any state, then they will have to necessarily go up to 132 if they want to serve that kind of population in terms of EV bus numbers. So obviously there will be large requirement of land and infrastructure as well in terms of establishment of the grid stations locally to serve that load. Reliability is going to be a challenge, where this kind of load will be requiring high level of reliability with 24/7 supply. So these all things are evolving in the, as far as transport EV charging is concerned, and I'm sure that most of the utilities are coping up with these kind of challenges and finding their own ways to address these challenges. Some of the challenges are locally and to state specific. Delhi is not India, and Delhi has some other demography and other constraints and challenges and opportunities, and the same model I'm sure cannot be replicated without customizing to different states. So yes, interesting time, and DISCOMs have to play a greater role in terms of providing energy to all these EV transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mukesh Darich. That was an excellent point in terms of the peak management and peak load management. I don't think anybody can understand that better than the utilities themselves. So how electric vehicles can impact, and how can we better prepare. Now I'd like to call upon another utility person, Tata Power. You may have heard of that utility name, Mr. Ramakrishna Singh, who is head of business operation. And I'd like to touch upon a unique thing that's happening in India that we haven't seen in the United States, that is the utility playing a very critical role in deploying and managing and operating charging infrastructure, right? So typically what we have seen in the United States is it's owned and operated either by the customers or charge point operators, as we call, but the charging infrastructure, electricity, is provided by the utilities. So this is a very unique model. Again, I mentioned about the disruption, how electric mobility is quite different from the internal combustion engine. This is another example. We can talk about how utilities are transforming themselves from their traditional business to a very another unique business model. And Mr. Ramakrishna is in the middle of all of that kind of a transformation. So I'd like to call upon him and talk a little bit about what Tata Power is doing with EV charging.
So thank you, Girish, and fellow panelists. Very good evening. Thank you, ISGF, for giving the opportunity to me for putting up my views on electrification of transport in India. So we were talking about chicken and egg story, but Tata Power has gone ahead and put up the chargers across India. So you can travel from Kashmir to Kanyakumari using Tata Power chargers. You can travel from Goa to Assam by using Tata Power chargers. So we have already deployed around 5,000 plus public chargers across India. We have also deployed home chargers, around 65,000 plus across India. And we are doing the fleet electrification along with the transport departments at Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Ahmedabad. So we are already putting up around 500 ultra-fast chargers of 200 kilowatt each. And each depot has a load of ranging from 4 megawatt to 10 megawatt. So Mukesh was talking about just now that the kind of load they need. So in Delhi only it is around 10 depots are being electrified by Tata Power. And out of that, 5 have already been inaugurated recently by Chief Minister and LG. Tata Power has also a digital platform by which you can plan your journey, you can identify the nearby chargers, even in Kochi. From Kochi to nearby twin cities, if you want to travel, you can use Tata Power chargers. So this is why Tata Power has gone ahead and why now India should go ahead and plan the electrification of transport sector. So you must be knowing that we are importing around 10 to 12 US billion crude oil every month. Okay. And out of that, around 70% diesel is used for the transport, road transport, and around 90% is used by the, petrol is used by the road transport. And if you use 1 liter of petrol for your traveling by your own car, it consumes around, it emits around 2.3 kg of CO2. And if you use the electricity generated, thermal electricity, for similar amount, so 1 unit is, generates around 600, 700 gram of CO2 emission. So by 1 unit, you can travel around 7-8 kilometers using electric vehicle, and similarly probably fuel, petrol or diesel also. So you are saving at least 1/3 of CO2 emission if you personally use electric car in place of ICE car. So that is a just thought. So why we should go? Because now the climate concern across India are coming up, not only across India but across globe. We are also the air quality, whether it's Mumbai, Delhi or all the metro cities in India, they are just it is becoming very difficult to breathe. So at least tailpipe emission can be completely eliminated if we electrify the transport or the intercity transport or the city transport to electric vehicle. Now also the energy security is another important part. Apart from that, the technological advancement. So now it is the right time that we got the battery technology now, which is advancing day by day. We are bringing down the cost of batteries. Also the electric mobility is becoming more innovative day by day. Global trends are also indicating that they are migrating towards the electric mobility. And the government is giving a lot of push to migrate towards the electric mobility. So this is the right time for government, private operators, and I think probably this is a collaborative effort that one can plan to electrification of transport in India. So it is not very easy to migrate, right? Like fellow panelists were talking about the grid, smart charging, whether the existing electrical network can cater the need of charging infrastructure. Like if by 2030, it is estimated that around 800 gigawatt of battery, electric vehicle battery would come into the system. And if you 800 gigawatt of electric battery system has to be charged, so you think of the amount of energy required on daily basis or monthly basis or weekly basis. So it's a huge challenge among all the stakeholders. And also I was just saying in the second panel that now this transport and electric, this DISCOM, distribution or power sector, transport and power sector is, now it is getting mixed up. Earlier both were different. So I also come from the power sector, but now learning a lot of things of the transport sector. So it is a lot of challenges are there, whether it's grid augmentation or modernization, or suppose we are having the highways or expressways across India. Most of the governments are going for the highways, expressways. So are we planning our expressways or the national highways so that they can cater the electrical infra requirement, electrical load requirement? Like some of the agencies are working on truck electrification or bus electrification on certain routes. So there we need a very high load requirement across the highway within a periphery of 200 meters across the highway. So like in expressways, we have pit stops every 100 kilometer, and there we need to have at least 10 megawatt to 20 megawatt kind of charging. So it's a fast, super fast, ultra fast charging wherein people can come, even if whether they are bus or truck or car, they can charge their car and move on. They also fuel themselves and refuel their car and vehicle also. Then another important part is the land. So land is another important part wherein municipal corporation or the landowning agencies need to come forward and share their land for electrification of the mobility. Because most of the land is owned by either municipal corporation or the this like in Delhi have the Delhi Development Authority or PWD or the National Highways authorities. So distribution grid planning we were talking about, so whether it's a grid optimization or load management or the unique requirement like we also need to see that what kind of load is coming in which city, whether it's a destination or it's a commercial city or it's just normal tier 2, tier 3 kind of cities. So we need to plan for each and every type of city. Then this collaboration is one of the very important part in while we go for this electrification of the transport sector. We need to adopt the unified strategy, whether it's transport department or the policy maker or the regulator or the DISCOMs. Funding and investment has to be encouraged. In one of the study in China, they primarily they completely electrified the city transport, and most of the funding came from the government because this public transport normally accounts for 30 to 35% pollution within the city itself. So I think that would be a great help. And also the data sharing out of this entire learning can be a very good point for all the policymakers, for all the stakeholders, through which further improvisation can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna Singh. That was excellent. I mean, you touched upon three very important things I wanted to highlight, which are unique to India. I mean, they are relevant anywhere else where the electromobility is. One is the energy security. You touched upon the oil import, how much important it is for India, right? The second one is the utility, reliability, and the revenue models. Load growth hasn't been really big for utilities for recent years. Energy efficiency, you can blame on it, but electric mobility represents a very unique revenue generation opportunity for the utilities. And then finally, you touched upon the pollution, my favorite topic, right? India has some of the most polluted cities in the world, and electric mobility can represent a great opportunity to reduce those emissions. So excellent point in touching upon those three key things. We are now moving into the private sector side of things after the regulations, policies, as well as the utility sector. we get to hear from them because the embracing of the electric mobility by the private sector is very critical for long-term sustainability and scalability of the mobility. So with that, I'd like to call upon Arindam Mitra, who I worked with Arindam when we were both colleagues at EPRI, which is one of the knowledge partners here. And Arindam works for L&T, and he would be tag teaming his presentation with Mr. S.K. Senapati, who is also from L&T, and I would like to request both of them to keep their presentation for 10 minutes or less, so we have one more and we need to wrap up. Okay, Arindam, over to you.
Yeah, I need the joysticks to move. Or is this fine? Let me make sure. Oops. I'm going backward. Can you check one more time? It didn't work. So while they are fixing the problem, good evening, Chair, good evening, Moderator, good evening, distinguished guests, and good evening to my fellow folks here. I promise I'll go 5 minutes. So a lot of discussion happened in the first session, as well as some of the challenges that you guys mentioned. I'm going to primarily focus on the US market, and my colleague Senapati will talk about the market in India. So we have talked about, and I'm not going to go into all the numbers, we have talked about the different sales, the market share, the market size, the penetration from a lot of people. So there are obviously opportunities, Rish, as you mentioned. For the last 1 decade, the load growth for any utility in US, and I'm assuming this is the same in India, was 0.5%. That's all you had, load growth. And now you have a tremendous opportunity. And just like Tata Power has taken the initiative to kind of use this as a business model, we are also seeing a transition of the utilities in US to kind of follow that same path, where there is an ownership model where a utility will own the asset. The second option is someone else owns the asset, but the utility will operate it. Then there is a community who owns it, but utility has visibility. And similarly, a third party owns it, a utility has visibility. Why is this important? Because without visibility, you cannot talk about tariffs. Not going to happen. Without understanding where the clusters of e-mobility is, you have no idea how this is going to perform. And this is not a small load. Some of you guys, Mr. Arvind, you mentioned that not all the time the load is at peak. That is the biggest challenge. Utility planning practice is based on static analysis. But here you have a spatial and a temporal mobile load that goes everywhere. So how do you, identify, like for example, the transformers or the secondary cable? How do you figure those out? So there are challenges that we will have to encounter. One thing I want to point out, and I think this is the same thing with respect to the Indian market, where initially the three-wheelers and two-wheelers have a much higher penetration, in India. But this is very different in US. Because if you look at the number of vehicles between what we call as the light vehicle category, the medium vehicle category, and the the large scale category, it's quite different. And it's one thing where we are talking about number of vehicles, and it's another thing about the energy usage of each of the vehicles. Because this is the foundation which will help, if you are a utility, to first understand where are you going to target. Because a transit, a bus charging is very different than a charging of 20 Tesla power chargers that we have at the off-road of the highway. Very different. So this factor has to be taken into consideration. And as you can see very quickly, in US, it is not just 1 or 2 states. The map is telling you it is spreading in all the states. So it's not like during Obama's time where he projected 1 million vehicles a certain year. This is getting the traction and momentum. And as one of you guys said, what do you go for, the chicken or the egg? You better have the charging infrastructure because the electric vehicles are coming. Okay, this is not the same thing I would have said 10 years ago, but this is going to happen now. Now, in the wake of this, in US, Department of Energy, through what they call as this National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, has distributed the funding across all the states. So the funding is not coming from, just not stagnating in the government, it is filtering it down to the state or the munis. It is then going to the utilities and the third parties. So as you can see right there with this approach, you have an ability where third party will get engaged, a community will get engaged, the utility will engage, so that the idea is it is not just the business model for one market, but for everyone. That's the way this Navy model has been set up in USA. And this is a similar list which kind of breaks down based on the utilities within each of the states. Okay, so I don't think I will have time to go over all these details, but as everyone said, this electric transportation is a new animal. There is a lot of unknowns. And from a business model standpoint, as well as from a planning and operation standpoint, we need to kind of figure some of these details out. So the most important thing, there are 2 things that we need to make sure we understand. And Mr. Arvind and Ramakrishna, Mr. Ramakrishna, you guys also mentioned, you have to look at it from a planning, you have to look at it from an operation. If you are going and looking at it from an operation standpoint, and you are deploying these systems and then figuring out planning, you are going backwards. So you really have to develop this framework, and as I said, this is not a static analysis. And I don't want to go into the details of what a static analysis is, but this will require more thinking, and I'm sure this same process will be applicable in India too as we work these details out. So, and again, and I mentioned about this in L&T, but I'm not really trying to sell any products with L&T. From an operation standpoint, there are 4 buckets. If you go to every utility, and Tata Power can vouch on that. So the utility will have their own fleets that they will deploy across their service territory. They will use someone else's fleet, but will operate those fleets. That's bucket number 2. Bucket number 3 is the community is installing those systems, and bucket number 4 is the third-party service provider installing this system. So from a utility standpoint, in order for you to have visibility first, not controls, visibility first, you need to work with these third-party vendors. That's a huge leap even in USA, because there are almost like 100 type of fast charging companies having their own clouds. And Rish, if you remember, almost 6-7 years ago, when we were talking about smart grid profile and Zigbee, every OEM had their own cloud. And how do you bring the data together? That's a challenge we will have to face. So you have to develop an aggregate platform. You guys mentioned Tata has that. And you also have to have local control. Because if you are thinking that you will put 25 of these Tesla 350 kilowatt fast chargers and you will have an express feed coming from a substation, just forget it. Because a load factor of a substation, even if you put an express feed, does not exceed today, at least in US, 40 to 60%. You put that express feed of 20 350 kilowatt fast charger, you are operating at the 80-90% load factor margin. So you have to do more optimization and planning. I think that's all, and you know, we have to talk about that both from a planning and operation standpoint so that we can implement this in a more cohesive fashion. I will give this to Senapati.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Girish. Thank you, my co-panelist and chair. So I'll just few things which are very critical in this EV planning side, which I'll quickly highlight. So the most important thing I've encountered here in India is the planning. EV planning is, I see, grid planning. So that is, I think, very much important. Today, the utilities are deploying the EV, then thinking how my grid will behave, and how the operational thing has to take care. So I feel the grid planning and simulation is very, very important before deploying the grid, before deploying this EV into the utility. So that is because you can plan the opportunity charging, overnight charging, fleet charging, your bus charging, and also always we should utilities should keep that in mind, the contingency part. Today, in a particular road, all your buses are running. There is a strike, there is a problem, they are taking diversion. Then what is the scenario there? So those scenarios need to be thoroughly checked before putting into operation. So that is one thing. Second thing comes, I always see that I come from the digitalization of energy, digital energy solution of L&T, and I always see the this digitalization has to play a big role in this EV. How it plays. So today, if you see, we have deployed a lot of chargers across the state, utility. We don't have a line of sight which is working, which is not working. So first, we should first know that. Multiple charge point operators, so that it give a picture, okay, this area is, if today see, if one area chargers are not working, then the EV vehicles will go to other parts of the city. So it create a congestion and all. So that side you need to look at. Then that's a very important thing, and I am not going to the product side. We have a solution for that. Today again we should see. So when I say digitalization, then people say, oh, it is cross-cutting. I told, let us discuss. So cross-cutting in the sense, okay, everywhere it is there. Then why not we'll bring this to the table. So if you'll see this EV charging ecosystem, we have grid, you have renewables, you have storage, you have EV chargers. So how we can manage the whole of the ecosystem so that there should be grid stability, there should be power available to the charging stations, and you can manage of the whole ecosystem. So what will get out of that? So we will have a relatively stable grid, and you can manage with that. So that is one of the reasons. And second, you can defer your investments with that. Your distribution investment and all, you can defer that. And so those two benefits you can get. And sometime we are discussing also, I have a solution for this particular thing, and America even has not deployed that. We have done a POC in India, and we are waiting to deploy in India. Even America has not done so far. So that is that. And today, okay, if you, sometime also this virtual power plant, we say that also helps us to stable the grid, to defer the investment. So those are the aspects, and even it benefits the consumer. So, but it is in the EV side, but as a whole, if you see, you have a multiple DRs, you have a storage, you have a renewable, you have a grid, it can manage the whole lot of ecosystem. So I think these are my few points, and what I have seen, I think that utilities has to take that very seriously, and then only things will make a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you, ISGF, for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Senapati, for that good remarks and the importance of flexibility or virtual power plant implementations, etc. And technology, of course, will play a very critical role. With that, we have last speakers. We have Ariel Dostare from Israel, speaking from the charging manufacturer's perspective. That was the only thing missing. I think there's one more. I wish I had a speaker here who would represent an OEM, automotive OEM community. That would have been really a full circle. But nonetheless, I think Ariel is a business development manager for Electrion, a company that's headquartered in Israel. So Ariel, I think it's 3 p.m. there afternoon. So not too late for you, so it's right time. So over to you, if you can give your prepared remarks in 5 minutes, please. Yeah.
Of course. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I'm gonna put something on the screen. I just hope it can be seen by the panel.
Okay. We can see it. It's too small. If you guys can work your magic and make it bigger. There you go. We can see it, Ariel. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. First and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you, and thank you earlier on for the well wishes on what I am calling from Israel, so we're hoping for peaceful and quieter times. But again, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'd love to speak and introduce Electrion, a little bit about our technology, our product, and some key use cases which we believe would be really applicable to the Indian market, as well as the operational benefits and the economic benefits that come from our technology. So we are a global company. We have a ecosystem of partners. We develop wireless electric vehicle charging. We have projects mainly in Europe, as well as the US. And while we're not in India yet with the project, it is a focus market. And to piggyback on everything that everyone else was speaking about, we are hoping to work primarily with utility companies, with grid companies, OEMs, as well as municipalities and fleet operators to develop an ecosystem where a project can flourish. And that's what we've done throughout Europe and Israel here, as well as the US. A bit about our technology. We are wireless EV charging, like I mentioned. The way it works is inductive charging. It's inductive coupling of copper coils that are embedded in the roadway that are managed by a management unit that you can see in the picture. It can be either above ground or below ground, which takes the energy from the grid. The grid energy can be from renewable sources as well. We have renewable source energy powering the roadway. And what this does is creates a magnetic field that transfers wireless energy, wireless power to receivers that are installed underneath the vehicle. And we have a management system in the cloud that can oversee all the parts of the charging. And this works in both scenarios where the vehicle is driving. What we call dynamic charging. An electric roadway system is where the vehicle can drive and charge while it drives, as well as static charging, which is more comparable to mainstream plug-in solutions where the vehicle is stationary and it can also receive wireless power transfer while it's parked. And ultimately, the major benefits of wireless charging and the operational benefits that I'll go into later very briefly is, first and foremost, no visual impacts. It's a nearly an invisible system, which is mainly underground, little exposed parts, and therefore little maintenance. And when you deploy this on a large scale, especially in a very urban environment in major cities, this can help save a lot of space that would otherwise be used for large components of charging infrastructure. If efficient EV operations, there's no need to interrupt services to charge. It's a technology that's meant to work into an EV's operational schedule, such as at loading docks, at ports, which is one of the main cases in India that we're researching, as well as in bus depots or bus station terminals, having layover times after an operational route. And when you're driving while you're charging, you're also not spending any time, extra time that you would need in order to dedicate to charging. This enables a maximization of operational uptime because you're charging as you go, and it's a hands-free solution. There's no need for a charging operator that would need to manage the charging. It's a shared charging platform. Many plug-in chargers require a single charging unit per vehicle, but this is not sustainable or space efficient, especially when you're talking about a future with millions and millions of electric vehicles. The technology is designed to work with any EV size, from trucks, vans, buses, passenger vehicles, and they can all charge wirelessly from the same centralized management unit, reducing the number of charging units that need to be deployed. And ultimately, the major benefit that we highlight usually is with wireless charging, which can be deployed in many scenarios and enable this opportunity charging to occur throughout a vehicle's journey, you have enablement of battery reduction. When you charge throughout the day from static at loading docks or bus depots or bus terminals or ports, or from dynamic along the roadway, then you greatly reduce the need to have a larger capacity battery because you're getting energy throughout the day. And this significantly saves costs for an EV fleet, not to mention the manufacturing emissions that would also be saved from battery production. As we know, each kilowatt hour of battery production has a carbon footprint, and this saves on not only costs for the battery, which when you multiply it by hundreds and thousands of vehicles in an entire fleet can be enormous, as well as the emissions from battery production, as well as the pressure on the grid ultimately. When you have a smaller battery with charging occurring throughout the day instead of all at once at one point in time, then you really, really help reduce the demand pressure on the grid. So now I want to go into a few major use cases and projects that we have. These are live operational projects, and I think these would be the most relevant for the Indian market, and we can talk about the operational and economic benefits. So first, one of our first projects was here in Tel Aviv with an urban bus, and what this bus did is in a combined solution, charge from static at endpoints as well as dynamic along the roadway. And what we were able to show with this is, yes, you can indeed reduce the need of the battery for one vehicle in this pilot to showcase the savings that could come about. So we were able to reduce the battery by nearly 90% in this scenario. And you multiply this saving again on a large scale for a fleet operator in a major city, in a major urban environment with many, many bus vehicles, then the savings can be significant. Secondly, this pilot, the success of it is what leads to commercial agreements. So a commercial agreement for 200 more buses was signed as a result of the success of this pilot. So usually when we enter markets, we look to develop a pilot project with one vehicle, two vehicles, and build on the success in order to have a larger commercial agreement with hopefully hundreds of vehicles. When we think about a full commercial agreement and a combined solution, we're ultimately trying to provide a solution that can, best case scenario, top up a vehicle's battery. In this case, it's a bus because it's really relevant in major urban settings, with enough energy to supply its consumption needs throughout the day. So in a typical case, when we have dynamic charging combined with static charging and the vehicle on a fixed route that goes over the dynamic roadway multiple times a day, as well as has static charging endpoint times for just 5 minutes throughout the day, you can provide enough energy throughout the day to typically support average urban buses' consumption needs. What you're doing at this point is, like, again, you're not only saving on the reduction of batteries, but you're also saving on grid at the overnight depot, and you're saving as well as end-of-day charging infrastructure that would need to be installed at the overnight depot. Because ultimately, your power comes throughout the day's journey, and you lessen the need for fleet charging all at once at the end of the day. And this could, in a typical case in Tel Aviv, we did a case study, it could be up to $50 million for 1,000 buses, just for the battery savings, 90 megawatts on the grid for a depot connection, as well as $20 million for the amount of plug-in chargers that can be saved from needing to be installed at the end of the day at the depot. In Balingen, we had another major urban bus case that we did. This is actually still currently operational. And in the same way, with this kind of opportunity charging, with static charging combined with just 400 meters of dynamic roadway, we were able to operate the bus continuously throughout the day without a reduction in the state of charge level of the battery size. At the height of charging operations with just 400 meters, the system provided up to 130 kilowatt hours of energy throughout the day, with an electric roadway that only comprised 7% of the total route. So again, you don't need to deploy a dynamic scenario to cover an entire route. Strategic points where vehicles are fixed over several points, heavy traffic locations, these are the most ideal parts of the vehicle's route that can benefit from dynamic charging. And a major project that we've showcased as well is our Gotland, Sweden project. This was a combined electric roadway for a truck as well as a bus. Deployment began in 2019 and was completed in 2020, and it just finished just recently. It ran for a few years. This was the first electric road charging 2 heavy-duty vehicles, an e-truck and an e-bus simultaneously along a 1 mile of dynamic roadway between an airport and the town center. And what we were able to show from this system is that the technology itself can withstand heavy-duty vehicles, multiple, from the same roadway. The truck, as well as the bus driving at the same time, charging at the same time on the roadway, resulted in structural integrity tests that we did to show that the roadway's system and structural integrity with the coils installed with heavy-duty vehicles running over it multiple times a day did not affect the instability of the roadway. We also show that the vehicles can drive up to speeds up to 80 kilometers an hour and still receive enough charge. And ultimately, this is the first step into large port vehicle scenarios where we hope to be able to charge trucks, mainly at loading and unloading docks at the port. Ultimately, I think what all these examples show, as well as the technology itself, is that we are in a commercial phase. We're ready for real projects. We have other electric truck and electric bus projects based on the success of the ones I mentioned here coming out, mainly in Utah at a port, in China with buses and port systems there, as well as in France. The ones I just chose to highlight here were ones that we've either completed or are live. But the technology is commercial. It's commercial ready, and we're ready for real projects. And we've started to look into port solutions as well in the India market to hopefully expand continually very soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Ariel. Appreciate that. Let's give a round of applause to Ariel. Thank you for that summary. I was missing the perspective from the charging station OEM, and thanks for giving that overview of what Electrion is doing there. With that, we have formally concluded the speaking side of things. I promised a little bit of interactive session, but we're running behind time. But I would like to see if we can at least get 5 minutes. I want to start with a little bit of an icebreaker question. I think it's very important to understand, I talked about the tipping point earlier, right? From the Indian context, right? We talked about the charging infrastructure, we talked about the policies, but what are some of the regulatory interventions that might be very critical to get to that tipping point? I'm just quoting Bloomberg here, they say 5%. So if we have to really get to that 5% of new vehicle sales to be electric, what are some of the policy interventions do we need to get before the market starts taking over? I'd like to call upon 2 of the policy people who are sitting next to me on my right and left to kind of give an overview of how do they see this problem. Mr. Jyotilal, if you want to start.
See, at the end of the day, the customers looks at what is the financials, So one point is, you need to have the power at the lowest rate possible. I think that's why I think we have put a tariff of 5.5. Though we capped in our policy at 5, maybe some more charges, okay. But I think that is a key. Second is more than people are not looking at subsidy. They will see the overall cost, the total cost of ownership. In the sense that the OPEX is one of the lowest. Naturally, they will go for it. CAPEX, if you are got money, then okay, definitely you can do. But infrastructure as an incentive, why I liked this presentation is that, see, here you are making the cost of the vehicle much less than a diesel vehicle or a petrol vehicle, but at the same time, the infrastructure investment is a long term. It's for a lifetime maybe investment. You may not recover immediately, but I think you are reducing the cost so that the burden comes down. The capex also comes down, and the operationally, if it is feasible, I am sure, I think people will all adopt it. So that's a model which we followed in two-wheelers and three-wheelers. In fact, we are one state which is, without giving much subsidy, we have got almost 1.2 lakh. I am sure if retrofitting is allowed, that is another thing, you know, so that it becomes cost effective. We need to understand the Indian market. People, if so the ARI approval for the retrofitting comes, I am sure 1 million we will be reaching very soon. Then maybe innovations. Another thing which KCB did is pole mounted charges. Everywhere, in fact, I am just telling in the morning, how best you can integrate telecom, the power sector, all the utilities into one. That is where we done with the Fairwood Group, we just did a study. In fact, they have brought back that the electric pole itself can become the everything. You make a steel structure and have a 5 meter height, you have got the cycle track, and maybe on 7.5 meter you have got the PRT autonomous vehicle, which is connected, electric, shared, and you have got integrate RE on both sides. You put 5G towers, cameras, all the utilities. So you have got, and we need to learn from our body. The God has created the body. None of the two vessels cross each other. There is no traffic signal. We only put it. So similar way, you have gradient separation. You have got different varying speeds, you know, the vehicle. You give separate, pathway for all of them. I think that is a very good example how best, instead of spending metros maybe 250 crores, where most of the metros are big. I was also metro chairman and MD of the Kochi metro and water metro we had gone for intermodal integration. That's where I think the open mobility networks which will make sure that people are all connected, seamless mobility between all modes of transport. I think then you need to have, that's what the vision which we kept it is zero cash, zero congestion, zero emissions, zero waste. Nothing but, there is no concept called waste, is nothing but energy only. So zero cash, zero, that means 100% digital and connected. So whether it is open mobility network or open open energy interface, which we talk about, so that then digital integration much more possible than the physical integration. So multimodal integration, like one small example I would like to say, the water metro we started, you know that after that the ridership in the metro itself has gone and metro has become profitable. We never thought that otherwise metro by itself was nowhere in the world I think metro is making profit. But operationally they became profitable when we put the water metro as the last feeder. So first mile and last mile connectivity. So those are the things which will, zero cash, zero congestion. Congestion means you need to plan your cities. So what has happened is now there is a coordination. Coordination means it's like committee. Committee means now they come to tea. People will come but distance will never get implemented. Whereas integration, so urban planning and transport planning needs to be integrated. So I think that is, these are the, I think, 4 pillars which will make that, you know, it is viable. More public transport will come, less emissions will come, and it is not that we need more vehicles to be bought. I think how to make the public transport as a reliable, and London is one of the best examples, where Shashi Verma, he had done it very, so the roads need not be widened. It's only that existing with the infrastructure, how best we can, intermodal integration can be brought about. I think that's a way, then electric will become, electric is only one of the components. We need to analyze in a holistic way. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think looking at holistically is very important from scalability perspective. So, Arvind, you worked a lot in the in the public sector. So, taking from your experiences, how do you think some of the key policy interventions should help get to that tipping point? Let's say 5%.
Putting a difficult question, I thought I've escaped that after retirement. But looking at from practical point of view, for every 1 rupee which is to be invested in generation, you require 1 rupee in distribution, roughly, transmission distribution. And the demand is going to be coming that one, and for that demand you're going to generate power, we require some investment. It will not go on its own, it's not market driven and all that one. Let's look at that Californian experience where the adoption of electric mobility has been very high. It's not run by the California utility alone. The environment regulators there in California have been much more stronger. The government of the government in California has been much stronger. They're given immense funding Now let's look at it. Why do you want this electric mobility to be in position? Why do you want it? It does not require it. It's just like a fashion. You want a washing machine, you can buy. You want to buy a dishwasher or a fan or AC, how does it matter? But why EV in the public domain? Why in the transport table? So somewhere the question was being put, you had put that one. We save so many billions of money in trying to substitute our oil import. We can save from carbon credits and all that one. So therefore, at a state level or a national level, there has to be a understanding and accountability and responsibility. I want EV vehicle because I want to reduce my import and save that foreign exchange. Or I want to introduce EV because I want the CO2 to come down. Who wants CO2 to come down? The government has to take the responsibility, CO2 has to come down. It is not going to be free. Nobody is going to this one. There's a cost to it. Now, what did California did? They started pumping funding into this one, in the grid connection, wherever it is required and all that. And look at the presentation. I think you've done the presentation. I think you can quote the figures about what it is. So if I'm in the government and looking at this particular point, I will require to help the distribution utility to give a directive, okay, this is what is required for a 5% tipping point, and you have to put it. If not today, tomorrow you're going to put more money trying to react to it. It's better to put money today. But why should the distribution utility put that money? Here comes a regulator who is going to tell that this is what is going to be done and this is what is required. If at the national level, if the regulatory policies and the government policies both are not hand in hand, electric mobility or whatever we are doing, this is going to be organic development. Somewhere demand has come, somewhere nothing. It's not going to be organized sort of a thing. So first issue, at the national level and at the state level, the clarity has to be there. The national level responsibility, how much funding you should do is basically because of reduction in oil import. Okay, you're saving a lot of money. At the state level, the environment is there, and the state wants to have what you call carbon-free, this one. Then there's another department in the environment which is saying that we want to have carbon credits. There are three places for where the funding has to be done. A fund has to be created. If this fund is not made available, then it becomes difficult for us to do this tipping point. Otherwise, in the morning, Mr. Chairman, sir, had said that, it's a question of chicken and egg sort of a thing. There's no chicken and egg. The question is that if we really want that thing to happen, then we have to put our money. If I'm going to say I want this, I have to pay for it. So that's the first issue. Second issue is that the regulators come out with some sort of a technical specifications and others, which will tell what has to be done. Now, for example, you take this one. Why should the three-wheelers run on diesel or petrol or whatever it is? Why should they run? This is not to be done by the Department of Electricity or Department of Energy. It is to be done by the Department of Transport. They're going to say, okay, all right, in this area we're not going to. That's what happened when we were discussing in Sri Lanka. We had to get down not from the state Sri Lanka Electricity Board. No. We did not. We were there with Sri Lanka Electricity Board. We were there with the Sri Lanka Renewable Energy Agency. But ultimately we had to go and fall on the feet of the Transport Department. They're saying that World Bank had come out with a report that the maximum pollution in Colombo is on account of this three-wheelers. And that has to be suddenly replaced. Now, a mandate, a diktat had to be given. And in India, unless you give a diktat, it will not work out. If you think that adoption is going to be on its own, it will never happen. Tipping point will not come unless there is some sort of a mandate somewhere. But who is to issue the mandate? I don't think BSES or Tata Power are going to issue the mandate. It will not happen. So somebody else. So that means that an integrated requirement is required, wherein Department of Transport, Department of Environment, who's looking into environment, the regulators in electricity division, regulators in transport, this one, all of them have to come together. But at the end of the day, paisa hai, to kaam chalega. Paisa nahi, to kaam nahi chalega.
Thank you. Money speaks, right? I appreciate that. So I know I will provide the discretion to the MC to see if we have 5 more minutes for one more question or we need to wrap it up. Okay, Arindam, you can make the comment. At the same time, I'll call upon one audience. If you have a critical question, you don't mind raising your hands. Get ready. After Arindam's comment, we'll come to your questions. Okay? If you don't mind coming here, because I'll pass the mic to you so everybody can hear your question also, whoever that is. So you have a question? Yeah, if you don't mind coming here, I will give you a mic in a second. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I just want to highlight, Arvind, what you mentioned. In all the other areas like decarbonization, resilience, a mandate was created and it was pushed to the utility. Electrification was done very, very differently. There was a target that the national level gave. Then every state, like you mentioned about California and New York, had a much bigger and more stronger target. But this money was pushed down to the state and the Department of Transportation within the state. This is one exception that we saw in US that has never happened before. This is very, very important because if you look at, I'm just making an example, let's look at battery. You have heard of microgrids, right? What did every utility do? They did a pilot. Someone mentioned in the second session about pilots and tariffs. So they did a pilot. They tried to rate base it, and they went to their regulator or commission and they got rejected. Why? Microgrid only serves 10 customers. You are trying to get this for your entire service territory. Did not fly. So this was done in this fashion because the benefit is nationwide. This is very important because this is not something US did uniquely. I think this business model and approach has to be followed globally. That's the only point.
Yeah, thank you, Arindam. Excellent point. And the public benefit, societal benefit. So there's a question there. Go ahead.
Yeah,
if you can give your name and your company you represent as well, please.
Yeah, my name is Chetan Bhatt. Good evening, everyone. So, I'm representing LS Control Systems. And my question is, I have purchased an electric vehicle, Tata electric vehicle. But till now, it's been 6 months, but my gated community which is there, they are not allowing me to install a charger. So are there any regulations or are there any rules that are set up that they will, I don't have any references to give them that I'm still fighting for that so that they can allow me. And one more question is there, this all are lithium ion battery operated vehicles. So are they really green energy? When we are mining it, so is it really green? Why aren't we, when we are introducing this animal as we saying, so why we have not gone for hydrogen fuel cells or, those vehicles?
Okay, we will touch upon the first one first. I don't mean to put both Mukesh and Ramakrishna Singh on the spot, especially on the first one. It's an important problem in the multi-unit dwellings, how charging infrastructure can be provided. Even US hasn't solved it completely yet. But in India, it's even a bigger problem. So if you don't mind answering that question.
Yeah, so it's a well-known problem in societies and dwelling units, and Delhi has many societies. So around 2 years back, this matter was discussed, the person living at 5th floor or 6th floor, how will he charge his vehicle? And incidentally, there was a post on the LinkedIn as well, where one person took his two-wheeler in the lift at 5th or 6th floor just for the charging. So that stirred the entire thing. And there came the concept of community charging. This is in between the private charging space and the public charging space. So as a utility, we are also approaching to the societies and RWS in our way to install the community charging solutions there. So we are offering solutions to them, providing the chargers at a common place, initially 1 or 2 number of chargers, and we assure them that once the number of vehicles will be increased, the chargers will be increased. So the players like Tata Power and other CPOs are collaborating with us in terms of hardware installation, electricity connections we are providing. So bringing this kind of community charging solutions for the consumers.
Is society not allowing it?
Yeah, that's where this awareness and other things plays a greater role. So initially we also faced such kind of problems from the RWN society. But later on, when we installed the chargers at 3-4 societies, then the other societies also got ready to install that. And we installed the chargers without having a single vehicle in the society. And to our surprise, within 6 months, there were 3-4 four-wheelers in the society after installation of chargers. So that is the effect of all these awareness and other things. Maybe
so I'll add what Mukesh has just concluded, that community charging is one of the options wherein society can approach to the DISCOM, or even Tata Power can also come and install the community charging if your society allows. So you have to convince your society. That is number one. Number two, the urban department has already issued a guidelines, National Building Code, under which all new societies would come up along with the mandatory electric vehicle charging infrastructure. But for the existing societies, I think it's still under deliberation, because depending upon the infrastructure, availability, and many other things are required. But for the new, it is already come.
Tata provides chargers with their car. So that also they are not allowing us to install, because they are planning for whatever community charging.
Specific society, specifically, in fact, in Mumbai we have a lot of such issues, wherein they have like people have gone to the this housing societies, registrar of housing societies, and also the local department, urban housing department, wherein they have got the order issued for the societies to allow the community charging at least. In case they are not allowing to individual charging, then they can be allowed at least for the community charging. So you need to push up your society management, and they would definitely allow you.
Okay, Reggie has a comment. Reggie, yeah.
This charging thing, we have all these years been dealing with regulators and utilities and all that. Recently, someone very important told me a very interesting suggestion. We should write to all the RERAs. There's a regulatory body for real estate regulatory authority in each state. So this suggestion came to me only a week ago in some other forum. So they are very powerful. When they issue for every builder or a society or any real estate for that matter, commercial or residential, they have to get a RERA registration in every state, and they are very powerful people. And most of them are ex-bureaucrats, and we will be writing to them from next week. We've been busy with them, so next week itself I will be writing to all the RERA chairmen in all the states that they should make it mandatory. And this picture of that our fellow taken in Bangalore, the scooter, is gone around the world. So that should not, and everywhere, all across India, the residential association, what you call that, residential welfare association, those fellows are draconian, worse than even the police department, whether it is Delhi or Bombay or South India. So RERA only can control them. We are going to write to them.
Excellent point. I mean, those are real world problems, right? So appreciate that question. I think at least even as I mentioned that in US also it's a similar problem. But the building codes are changing for us. The building codes mandate that certain multi-unit dwellings need to provide charging infrastructure, right? So India can start thinking forward. There are not too many electric vehicles right now, right? So if you start planning those building code, at least the new construction, existing construction can help have adequate charging infrastructure to start with.
In 2019, TCP or Town and Country Planning Organization in 2019 said that all new complexes and all new buildings, 20% parking place should be built with EV charging. Not done in one single unit. So
the
far.
enforcement becomes very critical,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
It's not about just the policy, the
is
enforcement of the policy also equally important. So I know your second question, the embodied carbon of battery electric vehicles versus hydrogen. It's a longer conversation. I want to see if anybody can take this question real quick.
It's a no-brainer, no need to discuss now.
Okay. So
because hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are not going to be commercially viable anytime soon. So no point in discussing.
So that settles the argument back there. But certainly embodied carbon is important to understand. And there are a lot of studies. I strongly suggest take a look at that. The difference between the electric vehicle battery embodied carbon, which is more than intercombustion engine of the factory. but after driving, you reduce that carbon quite a bit. There are a lot of papers in terms of how many miles you need to drive to reduce that embodied carbon when it becomes neutral and you start having net positivity and things like those. So that's a comment I can give you. There are a lot of studies, very comprehensive studies on that view. With that, I think I'd like to give a great round of applause to all the speakers for doing an excellent job. I think it was a well-rounded panel. Thanks for whoever put that together. I don't take the credit for it, but I think we touched upon a lot of very important topics in India and great representation by Kerala and what's happening here in the state. With that, over to you, Sanya.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have definitely surpassed the time, but the topic was so interesting and definitely all of you were captivated. So please give a round of applause to the entire panel here. I would like to request Raji sir to come onto the stage so that we can felicitate our speakers. Yes, Rajan sir, please come onto the stage. Requesting you to felicitate again our chair of the session, Mr. K.R. Jyotilal sir, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Energy, Government of Kerala. Okay, the next person? Yes. The felicitation to, yes, our moderator of the session, Mr. Girish Ghatakar, ISGF WG Chair on Flexibility and Electric Mobility. Thank you, sir. Requesting Mr. Arvind Jadhav to please come forward. Former Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka. It's an honor to felicitate you, sir. Mr. Mukesh Dadik, Head Business Development, Sustainability and Clean Technology, BSES, Yamuna Power Limited. Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramakrishna Singh, Head of Business Operations, EV Charging, Tata Power. Thank you, sir. Shri Arindam Maitra, VP and L&T PTD Digital Energy Grid Services, and SK Senapati, Head Sales and Commercial Services, L&T PTD Digital Energy Solutions. Much to his list. Mr. Arindam Maitra. Thank you, sir. Please put up your hands for Shri Arindam Maitra. Thank you, sir, and I would request all the guests to please come forward for a photo op.